Before you decide to change your habits or go on a no-buy, there's usually a string of behaviors or things that you participate in that when you look back, you see it and you go, that was a sign. That was the sign that I wasn't spending the way that I want to, or maybe that was a sign that there was a larger problem. Today in this video, I am talking about 6 signs that might indicate that you're spending beyond your means, you're overspending, you might have a shopping problem, or that it might be time to investigate. Before we get into today's video, I do want to say that this video is not intended to diagnose anybody with a shopping addiction or to do anything mental health related. This video is more so meant to flag behaviors that you might have that you might want to consider. Number 1 is that you're afraid to check in with your money, be it your bank account, your bills or bank statements, your credit card bills, or wherever your debt is held. You can get that mailed to you or check into a specific website. All of these kinds of things apply. Being afraid to check in with your money indicates that you're not spending the way that you want, or you're spending in a way that you know that you shouldn't. You already know it on some level, therefore you're avoiding looking at it because, the longer you don't look at it, the longer it's not true, or the longer that you don't have to face it. You don't want to know the damage that's been done because you don't really want to face the consequences. And avoiding your money or your bank statements can feel like avoiding your consequences because it's a bit like, if I don't know about it, then it's not true. Avoiding bank statements or credit card bills are ways that we can keep ourselves willfully ignorant so we can keep spending or shopping in the way that we really want to. It can be a little bit like avoiding the doctor, like the dentist, because you know or you assume you're not going to have a good progress report, or you avoid going to school or making eye contact with your teacher when you know you didn't do your homework. This can also have a larger impact where you just avoid knowing financial information or just avoiding your financial life altogether. So as an example, knowing how much you make a month, or knowing what your debt payments are, knowing what your interest rate is, or knowing how much interest that you owe. It could be one thing to know that your minimum payment is $273 a month, but it's another thing to look at the account and say, okay, how much interest has accumulated? How much money am I paying, or how much of my minimum payment is going to interest? How much of it is going to the principal? You can just make your minimum payments for months on end without ever looking into the account. I have another video where I talk about compassion and why that's so important to come to a circumstance like this, when you've been spending in ways that you know you shouldn't, and coming with compassion to those moments can help us face them and do so in a way that doesn't bring guilt or shame with it. So I'm going to link that video if you're in that moment and might need a little bit of encouragement. Number 2 is that you use retail therapy regular. You believe in it, you use it, or shopping is your main hobby. I remember, growing up or in the early 2000s, seeing things like shopping is my cardio, and even I still see the GIFs or the reels of the jokes about people who go to Target and then come out with $400 worth of stuff, and it's how funny. It's so normal now to overspend that we can sometimes be a little bit blind to our own habits. If the number one way you spend your time outside of work or school, whatever your job is, if that is shopping, that's a really big sign that you can be overspending. We can develop so many habits around shopping as a hobby, so many. And when shopping becomes a hobby, I think the dopamine is also involved. It's come to feel good. Dopamine can be involved in how we shop for a lot of factors, but when it becomes a hobby, we're telling ourselves, this is a way I like to spend my time. This is a way that I find pleasure or enjoyment. And so it feels good, and that dopamine and that feel good effect can incline us or encourage us to keep going and to participate in this. And this can include, shopping your way home from school or work or on your commute. I've shared many times about my love of shopping the shops at Union Station on my way home, or I used to go to the Eaton Center, not all the time, but like often enough. I would leave for school earlier, shop there if I had some time on my way back. How many of you go to TJ Maxx or Target as like the after school, after work activity that you do regularly? When we believe in concepts like retail therapy, we are more likely to use that thing. And also, if we believe that it helps, then we're also going to keep doing that thing. Moving on to number 3, you regularly participate in the buy and declutter cycle. If you're decluttering bags of stuff from your home every year, this is an indicator that you are overbuying, that you are buying more than you can physically store or own, like physically, but also mentally. Sometimes our closets, as an example, or our drawers might actually be overflowing, but other times stuff just takes up, too much of that mental space where you look in your closet, you look in your drawers, and you just, there's just too much mental clutter when you look around, or you don't know what to do with what you have. So it's overwhelming, even if the space isn't full. If you're constantly buying stuff, then you will fill up your space eventually, and the only real solution, or short-term solution, I should say, to fix that is to declutter, to make more space, to make more room for the stuff that you've just bought. And there's a lot of places of our homes this can happen, not just our drawers in our bedroom or our bathroom, our closets, our bookshelves, our counter space, our cupboards in our kitchen, our, physical surfaces. When we are over consuming, this becomes a cycle where we buy stuff, we keep buying, we buy too much stuff, we fill up our spaces, we feel overwhelmed, we feel clutter, we feel anxiety. And then to ease that, to calm that, to feel better, we declutter them and go, and then that leaves room to buy more stuff, even if that wasn't your intention. And then it comes to the declutter. And, you keep going and going and going. Now, most people declutter something in the course of the year. And I'm not talking about if you declutter stuff, period. I'm talking about the bags full of stuff every year. The buy and declutter cycle is, in my opinion, a real hallmark of overbuying. Because you filled your space. Your space is your limit. You filled it, and now you have the second habit as well of decluttering to fix your problem. And sometimes we can convince ourselves that we're doing a good thing because you have that mental ease, but also sometimes we can buy into this idea of, I'm going to pare down, or I'm going to declutter and, kind of be more minimalist, or this is going to be the last time, but that doesn't end up being the case. Similarly, and we're not going to stay here long, you have a difficult time differentiating between needs and wants. If you struggle differentiating between these two, it's likely that there is a blurred line between needs and wants, or you use the idea of a need in order to justify what is ultimately a want. So then you come to believe that you need something whenever you want something. So it feels important and it feels like a great choice because you need it. And then you buy a lot in this realm. And when you need something, it adds this urgency to the purchase. And that urgency feels okay or justified when we're discussing needs. You're like, yeah, I can buy this quick, or I can participate in that urgency because I need it. Feeling desperate for something or really wanting something to a point of urgency is not the same as a need. I feel like this one is more of a sub point than its own standalone point, because for a lot of the others on this list, they can be real red flags or real signs of overspending with this one, you don't necessarily have to be overspending to, have conflated these things. So it's not an indicator of itself, but I feel like it's something that could definitely contribute or exacerbate a problem that already exists. Number 4 is that you have no shopping criteria. This can look a lot of ways. If you have no shopping criteria, you could have just wanting something as the main reason why you make a purchase. But it's more than that. If you're somebody who is an overspender or who really enjoys shopping, you're often looking for reasons to shop. You're looking for reasons to say yes. So when you don't have any criteria, you can say yes a whole heck of a lot more. And, with that, you're avoiding reasons to say no. So if you don't develop any criteria of like what makes a good purchase or even something like a budget, having criteria helps you say no or perhaps encourages you to say no. And if you want to say yes, you want to avoid doing the things that might encourage you to say no. I think there's 2 ways we could use criteria. We have this general idea of stuff, like what makes a good purchase, a general idea of a budget, or a general idea of how much you want to wear something. Or you could have this kind of more general concept applying to consumables, like I want most of the things I own to be things that I can see myself using up. So let's say you go to, I don't know, Sephora, and you see something, you really want it, and then you ask yourself, hey, could I see myself using this up? No, probably don't buy it. The other way we could use shopping criteria is to already have something in mind, as in, I need a new pair of shoes. Here are the qualifications of what a good purchase would look like. In a lot of cases, you're going shopping with an intention or a purpose in mind. You're going shopping with criteria in mind, which is something that you're not doing if, you just want to shop, if you're an overshopper, overspender. This leads me to my next point, that you view rules and budgets negatively. What I said previously applies here. If you are an overshopper, overspender, you want to look for ways to spend money and you want to avoid anything that will help you say no. Rules and budgets are like the first and foremost thing, the ultimate tools that help us say no. So viewing these things negatively, as in they are undesirable or they prevent you from buying what you want, they are constraints instead of, let's say, guidelines or suggestions or anything helpful. If you view them negatively, then you're not going to want to use them. Like if somebody came up to you with advice that you thought was garbage, why would you take it? You wouldn't. So if you view a budget as a restriction and not a tool, why? Like you wouldn't use it. Yes, you can break a budget if you have one. That happens. But generally speaking, people who desire a budget are people who desire to be conscious consumers, people who desire to spend within their means. And so if you see the way that you're currently shopping as serving you in some way, you're going to be disinclined to want that budget or want those rules. And I do think that seeing a budget as a tool or a resource instead of a constraint is a mindset shift that's going to happen along the way if you do want to shop within your means. The last one is a big one, and it's having credit card debt and or viewing credit card debt as normal. Now, I have some interesting information for you. As of Q3 2023, so this was just a couple of months ago, like this year, the average credit card debt in the United States is $6,993. So the average cardholder has just about $7,000 worth of debt in the US. The state with the lowest average debt is Mississippi, with their average being $5,658. And to be clear, this isn't people are spending on average $5,600 a month on their credit card. This is having a balance that you can't pay back. I was curious, so I wanted to know what the stats for Canada are. We didn't break it down, by province. Our national average is $4,185. To convert it into USD, that would be just over $3,100. So our national average is lower than the US's national average, like by half. I was a little surprised about that, given that like our dollar and cost of living is generally higher. And here are two more pieces of information. Roughly 40% of Americans are willing to go into debt for holiday spending, and 60% of those already in debt were willing to go deeper into debt for holiday spending, holiday purposes. Credit card debt is so common, it has become normal. It has now become normal to have a balance on your credit card that you can't pay back. So normal that in Canada and the United States, our average is nearly $5,000. There's a lot of reasons why people can owe money on their credit cards, so I don't want to speculate too much about the why here. That's a bit of a slippery slope. I do think, though, when credit card debt is so common that, we have friends and family who have balances, or like you grew up with parents who had balances on their credit cards, or there's just this rhetoric or narrative in the circles that you belong to, it can be a little bit difficult to see the absurdity of it or just the negative consequences to it. And sometimes we can just get comfortable with the way things are, that we don't see the way things could be. Here is the honest truth about credit card debt. No matter what way you spin it, if you have credit card debt, money you can't pay off, then you're spending beyond your means. Just because credit card debt is normal, that does not mean that it's something that we have to accept, or that is a behavior that we have to participate in. And what people can afford, privilege does have a lot to do with it, but also what factors in, even to a small percent, are things like financial literacy. I actually took a financial literacy test that was based on like American spending principles, and there were 7 questions. The average American gets 3 out of 7 correct, and it was basic stuff like calculating interest rates and stuff with mortgages and things like that. I only mention this to say that financial literacy plays a role, even a small one. I say this because financial literacy plays a role. Our knowledge about our own finances and that of the country that we live in plays a role, but also our habits, our norms, and what we accept as okay or as behaviors that we want to engage in. If you do have credit card debt and you shopped your way into that debt, I strongly encourage you to check out or examine your spending habits, and also do that from a place of compassion and like self-love. Again, check out that video on compassion. It's going to be linked. All right, that's it for me today. I would really like to know before we leave, what are your signs? What are your red flags? Things that maybe you've noticed about yourself that were indicators of a larger spending problem. I'm very curious what the community has to say about this, so please drop them in the comments. Thanks for watching, hanging out with me today, and I hope you'll join me for another video around here soon. Bye.